So this is my 2007 four-wheel drive F-150 pickup, and a few years ago I decided I wanted to put some LT 305 5520 Mickey Thompson Baja ATZ P3s on it, along with some 20x9 wheels and some aftermarket fender flares, and just went with a $70 aluminum 2.5-inch leveling kit that I found online. Just kind of goes right above the whole strut spring package there, and brings it up about 2.5 inches. Levels it out really nice. The install went really well, the leveling kit. The only problem is I've gone through 2 sets of upper control arms since I've put the kit on the truck. So I figured there had to be a solution out there in the marketplace. Sure enough, there are. Several different companies manufacture upper control arms that kind of change the angle that the ball joint cup is set in, and found this really nice BDS kit online for my pickup. And it comes with both left and right upper control arms. Looks like a really nice heavy-duty kit. Looks like it's really well built. Everything is nice and sealed, which I like. Being in Ohio, the winter climates can be pretty nasty on parts. So it does have, appears to have a rebuildable Moog, a greasable ball joint, which I like as well. Along with the upper control arms, it comes with these caps that go over the ball joints with some O-rings and some grease inside to kind of help protect that area of the upper ball joints. So going to try to put these upper control arms on the truck here this afternoon, and kind of just see how everything goes. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do here is loosen the front wheel lug nuts just a little bit before I jack this thing up and put it on jack stands. As you can see, I got the tire and wheel off here on both sides of the vehicle. This is the OE style upper control arm. As you can see, it's right up against the spring there. Now this thing's, completely extended because I don't, I got the thing up on jack stands, but yeah. One side or the other, or both sides, or whatever's making a lot of rackets. So get these things off here and hopefully get the BDS units on here pretty quick. First thing I'm going to do here is take a 22 millimeter wrench and remove this upper ball joint. Kind of already broke it loose there, but it wasn't too bad. Okay, so now that I've got the upper ball joint nut loosened, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the spindle with a hammer. I'm going to hit it right there to break that loose from the ball joint. You can see where I was hitting the spindle there. Excuse me, right there. It took about 3 wraps, and it knocked it loose from the ball, or from the upper control arm, or from the ball joint, I should say. Got a jack underneath the lower control arm here to, I guess, relieve some of the pressure for when I take the knuckle loose from the upper control arm. And I got a 21 millimeter deep well socket here on the upper control arm, I guess, to chassis hardware. And I really should have a 21 millimeter wrench on the other side, but I don't, so I don't have one, so I just got an adjustable on there. But I don't think I'm really going to need it. Broke the nut loose on this side, and the inside one didn't really turn, so should be in business there. Just going to do the other side and get this upper control arm off the truck. The ball joint started spinning when I was taking the ball joint nut off, so I got a 10 millimeter wrench on the ball joint stem to keep the ball joint stem from spinning as I'm removing the nut. Alright, so on this side I did need to use the wrench on the bolt and the ratchet and socket on the nut, but it is coming off. Alright, so as I expected, as actually suspected, the bolts for the upper control arm are hitting the top of the strut spring setup. I can't knock them in anymore without hitting the top of the strut spring. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. I've got 3 bolts on the top. I'm going to remove the sway bar link on the bottom, and then lower the jack, and hopefully have enough space to push those bolts out. Alright, so on my sway bar end link, here underneath my lower control arm, I've got a 8mm socket on the end to keep the link from spinning, and then I've got a 18mm wrench on the lower nut of the sway bar link. Got a 15mm socket on to remove all 3 nuts that hold the top of the strut spring package on. Gonna remove those and hopefully pull this strut string package down enough to get those control arm bolts out. Okay, what I'm doing now is removing the lower nut and bolt that holds the strut spring package on. The nut is a 30mm on this one, and the bolt is a 27. So once I take that off, I should be able to get the whole strut spring package out. So I removed the lower strut spring bolt and nut, and I kind of pried it out of the lower control arm with pry bar and lowered it down enough that I should be able to get these control arm bolts out of here and put the new upper control arm on. So here's the OE upper control arm and the BDS upper control arm. As you can see, the BDS is a lot beefier. And I'll show you a couple things here. So here's, again, this is the second OE set of upper control arms I put on this truck since I did the leveling kit. Boot tore. Thing looks like it's pretty shot. And then the bushing on this end, pretty loose. Kind of moving around in there. This one on this side still feels halfway decent, but yeah, this one's totally shot. So glad I'm doing this right now. But so I'm just gonna kind of put everything back together. Okay, I got the BDS upper control arm in place here. Slid the factory bolts through, and got the factory nuts on there. Just going to kind of snug them down a little bit, but according to the BDS instructions, they do not want me to torque them down at this point. I believe the torque on these is 111 foot-pounds. So, took a little bit of persuasion, but I got the strut spring combo back into the lower control arm, slid the bolt back through, connected the nut. I'm going to go ahead and torque those down to specs, and then I'm going to go ahead and torque down these 3 nuts at the top of the spring strut combo to the frame. So right now I'm attaching the upper control arm to the steering knuckle. It says in the instructions to tighten it down to 50 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I just put the stabilizer link nut on. So that's back on. Just need to, once I get the other side done, put the tires and wheels back on the truck, as it says in the instructions, lower it down, get some weight on them, and then torque the upper control arm nuts and bolts down to spec. And I already greased the new ball joint on the top. Just need to put the cap on that with the O-ring and the grease, and then should be ready to rock and roll.